taking a look at the table now, it's all quite tight. Nottingham Forest look like they've secured a Champions League spot, sat in third place, 5 points above Chelsea. But 4 through 10, there's 8 games left in the Premier League. I think it's really up for grabs for anyone, really. But in this segment of the show, we're going to be doing a little state your case. So we're going to state our case for each team, why we believe that they will make the Champions League spot, top 4, top 5. And we're going to be reacting to what you guys have to argue. So, Tony, why don't we start off with you? We're going to go in order. Chelsea are currently sat in 4th. So state your case why they will make the Champions League.
Yeah, so for Chelsea here, 5 of their last 8 remaining fixtures are from teams from middle of the table to the bottom half of the table. Problem with that is they still have Liverpool, Newcastle, Nottingham Forest in there. So 3 very difficult games. 17 goal differential, right? That's 3rd best, tied with Manchester City. Only obviously Liverpool and Arsenal have more than that. Enzo Maresca, I think he's gone under the radar because there's been so many problems with other managers. He hasn't had to deal with all of the pressure. Plus, Hannah, I picked them at my other job in finishing in the top 4, so they just have to finish in the top 4, and that's my case for Chelsea.
Okay, I think they looked pretty good yesterday.
Yeah, moved into 4th place.
Keep that momentum going. Jen?
Yeah, I had Man City sitting in 5th, and I feel like this is a relatively straightforward one. I know, obviously, losing Erling Haaland is going to be a huge loss for them, but I think Man City qualification for Champions League is absolutely everything to them. And they will be, if they lose out on that, that's a huge disappointment for the club. With Marmoush coming back in and replacing Haaland, coming off the bench, scoring, I genuinely think they can play a little bit differently with him, which might benefit them. Phil Foden can play closer. Kevin De Bruyne, if he gets more minutes towards the end of the season, I think that'll benefit. Haaland wants to stay in the box, and rely on crosses coming in. Marmoush can change that. And again, obviously Manchester Derby coming up, Forest, which they've had disappointing results, but outside of those top 2 games, a lot less lower teams down in the league left to play. So I'm very, very confident that they'll make Champions League spots.
Manchester City, good. Nico, you've got Newcastle.
Yes.
Convince us.
Here's the caveat. How many Premier League games did we say are left?
8.
Not for Newcastle. There's 9. There's points to make up.
Oh, they've got a game in hand.
If there's a victory in that game in hand, they jump Chelsea and City on the table, right? They're sitting on 50 points if they get 53. So obviously no one's going to have a perfect end to the season. It'll be crazy if a team wins the 8 games. There's going to be stumbling blocks here and there for everybody. But Newcastle, one of their main objectives of this season is completed already. It's not like they have an FA Cup final coming up. They won the League Cup already, right? And they can use that as motivation to then grow into the season because they only have one more objective, and that's to make Champions League at this point. And they're hitting form. I mean, with Alexander Isak leaving the lines, but they have mostly everybody healthy. I know there's a couple of questions in the back line still, but regardless, it feels like they can ride this wave of momentum and keep on making up points. The end of the season is going to be tough, though, because they do play difficult teams. They have to go to Brighton, Chelsea, at Arsenal, and then the last game for Everton at the end of the season.
I think that game in hand will be a big one for Newcastle. I'm going to state my case now why I think Aston Villa will make a Champions League spot. I think their bench is really good. And I'm not saying it doesn't matter who starts, but I think they've got a really good bench to rely on. The other day when they played against Brighton, their bench was Disasi, Watkins, Mallon, Asensio, Onana, Mings. A very strong bench to be able to bring on those players in the 60th, 70th minute to kind of boost the game or change up the game. I said about a month ago, when they had all the injuries, come end of March, start of April, they should be able to pick up the momentum because they've got players back from injury. So I think that goes really in their favour. The only thing that maybe might not help them, like you guys have said, is fixtures. I feel like everyone's playing Forest. They've got Forest this weekend, they've also got Newcastle, and they've also got Man City. So all the teams that you've stated your case for, they are playing. If they get through those games, I think they have a good shot. They're playing in Champions League this year. They've experienced how special it is. The fans have experienced how magical it is on those Champions League nights. So I think that gives them a bit of motivation to get back into the Champions League next season. Jen?
Brighton up next.
Yes.
Can I convince you guys?
Now we're getting to territory where I'm unconvinced by most after that.
Okay, I'm going to start. I'm going to start with you know what? I'll be honest. Their fixture against Man City in March kind of convinced me a little bit. 2-2 at the Etihad, and twice they've come back from losing at home to Man City and Spurs. Came back 3-2 and 2-1. Home form, I think, is going to be the run-in for them, and they don't have too big fixtures either. Sitting in 8th, obviously, you know, pushing, but their difficulty in their run-in is not as bad as other teams. Again, placing against teams lower ranked than them, lower down the ladder. Set pieces have been so key for them this season, which I think they've scored multiple goals from, and I think that home form, set piece ability, players off the bench, have I convinced you guys?
It's hard. It's difficult when you get to these teams. Like now, Tony, you've got to convince us why Fulham.
Yeah.
Craven Cottage
Fulham
on Champions League nights.
Yeah, one an incredible manager in Marco Silva. I think one of the more underrated guys. It is tough. The one thing, obviously, they don't have to worry about anything else other than 8 games, so there's a singular focus, and that's the Premier League. But unfortunately for them, it includes Liverpool next, Chelsea, Bournemouth away, Villa away, City. This of the teams, as far as I could see, and I didn't do any math problems, but they have one of the more difficult schedules moving forward. So the one thing they won't do is take their foot off the pedal in any game, right? They understand that every single point, every minute is important. And again, I think Marco Silva does a really good job with this group. And they have an American right back in Anthony Robinson, so that's how I'm going to convince you that they're going to be Champions League spot.
Speaking of Americans, I've got Tyler Adams at Bournemouth that I'm trying to convince you guys about. I think Marco Silva and Andoni Iraola are in the same category of managers they might not be there next season. If I'm a top club in the Premier League, I'm looking at one of these two saying, I like what they've done this season with the projects with their respective clubs, Fulham and Bournemouth. But I'm not even convinced of what I'm about to say because it's going to have to be heroic for Bournemouth. It feels like this aggressive mentality that they have. You've got a guy like Evan Nilsson, Kepa in goal, but it feels like it's run its course, especially towards the end of the season where you have really difficult matchups. You're closing out against Manchester City in the second to last match day. You're hosting Villa, who's going to be in the mix. You've got a game coming up against Manchester United, which you can possibly win, but then going to Arsenal, it's going to be really tricky it's essentially, you have to be perfect in Bournemouth, and they're valiant. But I unconvinced myself.
You're not even
No,
you
turn it around. I mean, I would love to see percentages. What are the percentages of Bournemouth making Champions League at this point? It must be less than 5%. It's too much ground to make up with other teams hitting form like a Newcastle, like a Chelsea, City.
Like a Villa.
Yeah.
Tony, now you've heard all of our cases. I want you to give us your top 5 Premier League standings at the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm going to go boring here. I looked at this, and I think it ends up the way it is right now, Hannah, with Liverpool at the top of the table, Arsenal, Nottingham Forest. I don't think those 3 are going to change. I think there'll come a moment where Nottingham Forest actually becomes safe, at some point, doesn't have to worry about it. Chelsea moving in the top 4 again. I like their side. I'm not surprised they're here. And, of course, City is, Jen pointed out, they know what the mission is, and we're all assuming, right, they're going to get 5 Champions League spots. That's the way the coefficient is going to play out. So I'm going to say it's going to end on match day 38 the way it is on match day 30 right now.